Hello, everyone, and welcome to another live edition here on my channel, Luis Borrero Visual Artist. Thank you for being here today. We're running a bit late today, but I really appreciate the visit. Today, I have a special presentation. I'm going to be talking about artist palettes. It's a really wonderful presentation with a whole array of information. Your questions are always welcome. For those of you that are joining, welcome. And for those of you that are joining for the first time, welcome to the channel. So I have a lot of information to share today, and I'm going to be answering questions as well. So I just want to begin by just talking a little bit about the references. This is so important because a lot of the information that I share here, I do a lot of research for, and I'm interested in sharing that information with you guys. So just a few books that I'm always sharing, but they always keep coming up, and they're wonderful books for those of you that are interested in doing your own research at home. For Spanish speakers, El Arte de la Pintura continues to be a wonderful book with just a vast amount of information, specifically about artists that were working in Spain during the 17th century. So this is a go-to book. Another wonderful book that I share constantly is Artist Techniques in Golden Age Spain by Zaira Beliz. 6 manuscripts detailed here and translated into English. So for those of you that do not speak Spanish, this is a wonderful book. And I want to share another book here about Rembrandt techniques. I've mentioned a lot of these books I've already shared, but I continue to do research. There's just so much information. So I always go back to these books because I consider them probably the best books in terms of the chemical analysis, the research that is being carried out by the museums. So these are probably the best go-to books. And for those of you that are probably wondering where to find the links, in the description below, you could find the links to every one of these books. I believe that there's only one book or two books that are out of print. Uh, the next book that I'm going to be sharing is out of print, unfortunately. But this one in particular, you could find through Amazon. Art in the Making, Rembrandt. This book is a go-to wonderful resource for those of you that are interested in Rembrandt. And this is my all-time favorite book. This, unfortunately, is out of print. This is Velazquez, Técnica y Evolución. It's a book that is written in Spanish. It was published during the 90s by El Prado, and it's a survey of all the museum paintings uh, by Velazquez, excuse me, all the Velazquez paintings that are housed in El Prado. This is probably the best book on Velazquez. It has detailed information on layer by layer information with some wonderful reproductions and commentary by the conservators and the scientists working at El Prado. So probably the most complete book on Velazquez. And there's another book that you could find that is, I believe the watered down version of this book is Technique of Genius. Uh, that book you could find on Amazon. Wonderful book with some detailed information about his palettes, his working methods, the linen supports, and some radiographs as well. So I just want to begin by talking a little bit about this is a subject that I'm sharing today that a lot of artists have sort of been wondering about for years. The idea of palettes. Today we have a vast amount of colors to use and to choose from. Today we just go to the art store and we could get any color that we want. We just purchase the color, we go home, and here we go. We're ready to paint. But for the artists working during the Renaissance and up to the 19th centuries, they had to prepare their own colors. They had to get the pigments, and they had to know how to prepare these colors and how to harmonize these colors with each other's. A lot of the pigments have defects, and um, it's really difficult to sort of gauge today how artists such as Rembrandt or Velazquez who have been limited in their approach to color. So we tend to think that they were limited, but they really did wonderful things with their palettes, and that's what I want to focus on today. How these artists, these great artists, use this very limited amount of colors to create some amazing, wonderful effects in their paintings. So I just want to begin by sharing some literature with you guys. A lot of the information that I get, I'm always researching and I find in the manuscripts. So the first thing that I want to do is I want to share a page from a manuscript. Um, this manuscript, this is from an anonymous manuscript. I believe this manuscript from Portugal is from the Saira Beliz book, the Artist Techniques in Golden Age Spain. Now, here you see that there's a description of the palette. And this is common for a lot of the manuscripts that you find during the 17th century and earlier. Uh, Artists were interested in sharing the knowledge of the colors. I've in a lot of my research, I have tried to find some color theory, something that sort of details at least some sort of scientific approach to color. And unfortunately, I have not been able to find, except in the notes of Leonardo, he's interested in detailing perhaps the ideas of atmospheric perspective. But during the 17th and earlier centuries, there was not really a scientific approach to color. And in Pacheco's book, he has a little chapter on color theory. It's very limited though, and he relates it to alchemy. So he uses color in relation to alchemy. For example, he mentions the color blue relating to the sky, the color green relating to water, the color brown relating to earth, and the color red relating to fire. And I found this very interesting because you see how artists from this era are thinking of metaphorical connotations to color. And that's something that artists today perhaps are not too aware of. Today, we tend to think more of it scientific and optical color, the color that is observed, the theoretical color that we're taught at school. So it was very interesting to see that an author like Pacheco is thinking about color in terms of metaphor and in terms of alchemy. And I believe that this is an important development for how artists began to approach color. More of a tradition and less of perhaps as we are taught today. I mean, in art school today, you go to a classroom and the teacher just says, well, observe the model and just start mixing color. Well, I find that in all these manuscripts, there's pages and pages and pages of descriptions of palettes and also the mixtures, how to mix, for example, flesh color, how to mix the color of hair, how to mix the color of the sky. So it seems that the mixtures that the old masters were learning were passed down from generation to generation. It's not really until the 19th century, the development of Impressionism, that we see the scientific approach to color. And that's important to know because what I'm going to show you is palettes that are very, very common, but artists are using their own creativity to bring their own approach to color, a personal sense to color. So I want to share with you guys a description of a palette. This is by Palomino, and it's in the Zaira Beliz book that I just shared with you guys. This is for those of you that speak Spanish. You could find this book in archive.org, and it's En la escala óptica y museo pictórico by Antonio Palomino. And let's just go ahead and take a look at that image. So here you see a typical description of a palette with the colors from the age. Here you see the lead white, and what is interesting about this particular diagram is the arrangement. You see an arrangement of vermilion, lead white. They have here Massica, which is a type of Naples yellow or lead tin yellow. It was usually heated. They would heat lead white and create this sort of yellowish color. You see the ochres. You see the carmine or carmine color, which is a cochineal lake. And it goes there to the darker colors, such as umber and black, and to the blues, smalt and indigo, and also azurite. So really introvert is included as well. So this is important because this arrangement does not change much. And what I'm going to show you in the pre-recorded video that I did detailing 4 artists in particular. I'm going to be focusing on Rembrandt's palette, Velazquez palette, Rubens, and Goya. And Goya is much later, is late 18th or early 19th century, late 18th century. So you'll see how the scientific developments in color, such as the invention of new colors, sort of made their way into the palettes of artists that were working during that era. So really important. And what I want to do is I want to share the video that I've prepared detailing each and every palette of the individual artists. And what I did is I mixed individual passages in some areas, for example, in the flesh or in the hair, using that very palette. Remember that I'm using historical colors. These are not modern colors for a lot of you that are joining the channel. I'm interested in historical colors only. Uh, I'm going to talk about the modern equivalents towards the end of the video, colors that replace these historical colors and colors that you could use today to replace some of these historical colors that are very expensive or hard to find. So that's important to know. Also, the colors are handmade, so they have different textures, and that's important to detail here. All right, so let's just take a look at the videos that I created for you guys. So here's a video um, that has 4 paintings by 4 different masters. I'm going to begin with Rembrandt. And here's the sticklet white, yellow ochre. And I'm going to go ahead and stop the video real quick because it goes too quick. So the palette here is stacklet white, yellow ochre, raw sienna, Venetian red, burned ochre, cochineal lake, Italian raw umber, okay, and bone black. We could just go ahead and play that video. Bone black and or carbon black. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to mix my lead white just to show you how Rembrandt might have mixed some of these flesh tones with a bit of yellow ochre. Okay, this is a light or medium yellow ochre with the stack process lead white. And you see that this painting is very loosely applied. The colors right there, there's a highlight color, lead white and yellow ochre, okay? And I just bring a little bit of Venetian red into that mixture. And that color is the color of the edge of the nose right there. That just warms up the color just slightly. And I'm gonna just go ahead and push the color a little bit with more Venetian red, and that's the color of the cheek. So with a very simple palette, Rembrandt is using these very simple colors to turn form. And here's the use of black. For those of you that are wondering the use of black, you need the white, always the white, to make it sort of a grayish, bluish color, okay? And he puts just the slightest stroke of gray right there to cool off the flesh. In the case of Velazquez, Diego Velazquez, a painting from 1640, he's using sticklet white and calcite. Now let's just stop the video real quick. So stacklet white and calcite, this is common of Velazquez. He is interested in using a lead white that is sort of transparent to make the use of transparency and opacity more apparent in his velaturas. He uses yellow ochre. He uses Spanish red ochre, which the Spaniards call almagra. He's using cochineal lake, which the Spaniards call carmine. And let's just go ahead and continue with the video. Here he's using Italian raw umber, sombra, vine black, azurite, and smalt, and vermellón de mercurio or vermilion of mercury. Now this is a very simple palette, and his approach to flesh color is very different. He's mixing the vermilion instead of the red ochre. This is a female, so he wants cooler pinks, softer pinks. So the vermilion and lead white will give you a very beautiful pink color, or in this case, a reddish color for the headband. That's a beautiful use of vermilion over a brownish, greenish ground. And there he's using, once again, the black, white, and vine black to create this sort of cooler. Now, this is important. Let me just stop the video here for 2 seconds. Now, I'm bringing smalt into the mixture to cool it off. This is the equivalent of a sort of a blue-black. During the 19th century, artists started using Prussian blue, but they do find, and I found it in the Velazquez Técnica en Evolución book, they find a mixture of vine black, lead white, and smalt. The reason he was doing this is because he wants a cooler gray color so he could harmonize or cool off the flesh. And that's exactly what I did here. So let's just go ahead and continue with the video. So I'm going to bring that gray, very soft gray, into my, I'm bringing a little bit more smalt in there. The smalt is a fugitive color. You could also use, and Velazquez did use azurite from time to time in his flesh tones. And just look at how I'm using a very soft tint. You don't want to abuse the black. Just to cool off the flesh. It's a neutralizer, and that's the great neutralizer of the old masters. Today, a lot of artists do not use this approach, but in the old days, this was the great neutralizer. Black was acted as a neutralizer. And look how I'm using that pinkish color with the gray, and this will give you a whole array of flesh tones. I'm going to mix a lighter tone there in order to mix the highlight tone of the flesh. You could also add a little bit of yellow ochre if you want a more yellow, softer tint. But in this case, I believe that Velazquez was just using sort of a pinkish gray for the highlight right there. And it's a vellatura, meaning that the paint is just scumbled over this grayish color underneath. Not really sure if it's a grisaille. Velazquez is not really known for his use of grisaille in this very quick paintings. Remember that this painting is unfinished, and in the hands you can see where he leaves the ground exposed, so there's not really a grisaille there. That's the smalt, lead white, and now I'm mixing the background color. I'm using yellow ochre, smalt. You could also use azurite. And that will give me the background greenish color. Beautiful color. And there you see that beautiful neutral gray cool color that is sort of analogous to the mercuric sulfide red. In the case of Peter Paul Rubens, a painting from 1636, Helena Forment in a fur robe. This is a detail. Okay, so let's just take a look at the palette. I have stacklet white, lead tin yellow, yellow ochre, raw sienna. I have Venetian red, burnt ochre, madder lake, brown ochre, raw umber, bone black or lamp black, azurite, and smalt, and also vermilion of mercury. So these are very wonderful colors. Remember that these are the standard colors that painters would have had available during this time. So the palette does not change much, except the addition of perhaps the lead tin yellow. And here you see the lead tin yellow mixed with the lead white for the highlight. This is common of Rubens. He used a lot of lead tin yellow in the flesh, and he uses it to create this sort of golden color. Rembrandt also used this color. Remember that I'm going on a painting by painting basis. These artists may have used the whole entirety of the colors, but I'm just focusing on the palette for each individual painting. Here I'm using vermilion mixed with the lead tin yellow, which gives you a beautiful, beautiful flesh tone. Okay, it's a very, very subtle color. If you use cadmium red here, you would kill this color. So um, lead tin yellow is very different than cadmium yellow. So you would have to cut down the cadmium yellow in order to achieve colors similar to this. And there I'm using lead tin yellow vermilion for the cheek color. This is common of Rubens, and I found this information in the National Gallery Technical Bulletin. So if you're interested in finding that out, you can find that information in the National Gallery Technical Bulletin website. So there I'm mixing once again the black and the white. And this time I'm going to add a little bit of azurite. This gives me a greener blue, which will harmonize with, it'll sort of create this analogous color with the pink. So orange with a little bit of blue right there. Okay, the complementaries. So there you see that it looks very cool, almost like blue, but it's mostly gray and white. It's mostly black and white, with just an addition of azurite. And these mixtures I found, I have researched their manuscripts, and they describe a lot of these mixtures. There you see underneath the eye, he just applies that just the slightest scumble of that cool color. Now I'm mixing a little bit of yellow ochre. You could also mix a little bit of raw sienna with a little bit of the smalt or azurite. In this case, it's azurite, and it gives you the softest green, very, very earthy green that Rubens employs to sort of harmonize the overall surrounding areas of the flesh. There in the headband, you see that he's harmonizing with green and red. So here's Francisco Goya, a portrait of Victor Gouillet, 1810, and you'll see that the palette is pretty much the same with the addition of two different colors. So I have the lead white, the Naples yellow, yellow ochre, raw sienna, Spanish red ochre, burnt sienna, cochineal lake, raw umber, vine black, and Prussian blue, and the vermilion, of course. So let's just go ahead and stop the video real quick. So here you have the addition of hornaza. The hornaza is Naples yellow, and I have shared in the description below an article of a technical bulletin from a restoration or an analysis of Francisco Goya's portrait of, I believe, is Fernando VII, Ferdinand VII, and he did a portrait of this king, and he uses these very colors, and that's where I'm getting the information. Indeed, this portrait of Victor Gouillet, and I did a lot of mixtures for this portrait in particular, and I found that he is indeed using the same colors. So the Naples yellow is very similar to the lead tin yellow, and today you could find readily available the Naples yellow. Is still a color that is still in use by a lot of artists. So earthier yellow than perhaps cadmium yellow or lead tin yellow. It gives you beautiful, beautiful golden color. And he's adding here also the burnt sienna. Earlier artists used burnt ochre. And what's the difference? Well, the burnt sienna is essentially it could be an artificial iron red oxide, or you could take just raw sienna and toast it, and it becomes burnt sienna. In the old days, they probably used an array of ochres, and they would use the same technique. They would burn this color or toast it, and it changes to a reddish color. And today we have burnt sienna. It's essentially a synthetic iron oxide. You could find it readily available in any artist uh, brand. So wonderful color. And here for the first time, you see that somebody like Goya is using this color. And then you have the Cochino Lake, which is also known as Carmine, and also the addition of Prussian blue. Now, the Prussian blue is particular because by the late 18th century, they had discovered this Prussian blue, which is a wonderful sort of dark um, greenish color blue, and it harmonizes beautifully with the red. So Goya is using that color in this painting, particularly in the, you'll see around the eyes and in the background. It's a wonderful color. You could find this color nowadays readily available. Perhaps it's not the same formula as the Prussian blue from the old days, but you could find information on the internet about the manufacture of Prussian blue. All right, let's just continue here. So lead white, and they find dolomite or calcite with Goya's. It has been adulterated. His lead white has been adulterated, so we no longer see perhaps the stack process lead white. Perhaps the manufacturer had changed, and there I'm mixing the lead white with vermilion. Okay, wonderful mixture that you see all across uh, all these artists. The vermilion and white is a go-to mixture that I use myself. And with a bit of yellow ochre as well, you see that it gives you the most subtle pinkish tone. And that is indeed the color that Goya uses for the cheek. You could also add a little bit of more yellow ochre or more pink, depending on the color that the tonality or the temperature that you're interested in achieving. Um, there I'm using a bit of the black, okay? In this case, vine black, once again. The vine black is typical of Spanish artists. It was used more than the bone black. Also, the lamp black is popular. And I'm putting a little bit of Prussian blue right with the black. This is also considered nowadays sort of like a blue-black. A typical mixture that a lot of artists, even today, employ. And this is a wonderful bluish tone that you could use to neutralize flesh tones. Notice how it's less black and more Prussian blue. This is important because if you put too much black, you will kill that beautiful gray color. And I'm going to, now that I have this wonderful cool color, I'm going to put a little raw sienna into it to get this beautiful greenish tone. And this is the tone that most likely Goya used for the eye. And just look at what a beautiful blue the eye is. This is just a wonderful effect. And Goya is using an orange ground. I have another image here coming up where you'll see the orange ground. And let's just stop the video real quick. I just want to talk about the ground. This ground that Goya was using is sort of an orangey color or very intense orange color ground. It has red lead. They find red lead, and in the description below, you could see um, the analysis that the technical journal that I shared. Uh, Unfortunately, the technical journal is written in Spanish, so you'll probably have to translate it. But I've taken the vital information, and I'm sharing it here. The ground consists of lead white with a little bit of dolomite. It has been adulterated with dolomite. There's an earth color, and he uses red lead. And that red lead is important because it gives you this real sort of very bright orange color. Um, there's also iron oxides, probably most likely a Spanish red ochre or even a yellow ochre, or sort of they call it arcilla, which is a clay-based pigment. And Goya painted over this orange ground with these cooler colors. It's a wonderful effect, and I apologize for the video. My server here it's acting up, so unfortunately I cannot share the rest of that video. But uh, you see how he's using that sort of greenish color with the Prussian blue to create this uh, optical color. So you have the orange and then the analogous color, which is blue-green. So just wonderful, wonderful techniques, an amazing use of limited palettes and amazing use of color. Nowadays, we have such a vast amount of colors that artists get confused. And I'm always getting messages from you guys asking me, Luis, which colors do you mix? What do you recommend? Should I use black? And uh, during the 19th century, a lot of the Impressionists stopped using black, and that became sort of the norm. Nowadays, when you go to art school, a lot of the teachers tell you do not use black, and it's because students really abuse the black. You could get dirty color in 2 seconds if you're using too much black. So there you saw the use of black, which is you go to the white, then to the vine black, you mix a very soft gray, and then you bring that into the flesh color. I hardly ever use black into directly into the flesh color because it will destroy your mixture. This is important. So I think we have a few questions. Let's see. And thank you for joining today, for those of you that are joining. Let's see. So Luis, hello. Thank you for coming by. And Scott, thank you for coming by. I really appreciate the visit. Thank you. So yeah, a lot of information, and there's this is important. I want to know that um, a lot of artists are using contemporary colors such as cerulean blue, cobalt blue. So how could you replace a lot of these historical colors? So for example, you could replace the azurite with cerulean blue. The cerulean blue tends to be a greener bluish color. The smalt is a fugitive color, and a lot of these paintings have suffered because the smalt that was manufactured during the 17th century had the formula. Perhaps there was not a high concentration of cobalt, and this color becomes gray or brownish. So you could replace that with a modern ultramarine blue. Now, remember that modern colors are very intense. So this is another drawback of modern colors. You saw there that I mixed maybe one or two colors, and immediately I got the flesh color or the greenish color of the background, and that's difficult to do with, if you're using a primary palette or prismatic palette with three yellows, for example, cat yellow light, cat yellow medium, and cat yellow dark. You're gonna run in trouble. So here I have a palette, and I want to show you the palette that I recorded earlier. So this is the palette, typical palette, and these are the mixtures that I was using for the Goya. And so that last, and I want to share this because the video unfortunately cut out, but in the code, and you saw the use of yellow, and that mixture was yellow ochre, Naples yellow, and you get this beautiful yellow color. So nowadays, artists are using perhaps three prismatic yellows, three prismatic reds, such as cat red light, cat red medium, cat red dark, and perhaps three blues, three greens, and even purple in their palette. And artists during this time were not they did not have those colors available, so they had to really harmonize the colors based almost on temperature relationships. What does this mean? It means that, for example, you have here blue and orange, or bluish orange, and you create a harmony out of that, a series of relationships based on those two complementaries. The same thing with the green. So you're using the red, the vermilion, and another type of green, and you're going to use those complementaries. Okay, this is important because the temperature, that contrast of temperature, will really give you a lot of rotation in the form, specifically in terms of just color relationships and value. So as you can see, the old masters were also more concerned with tonal structures, such as the idea of light to dark. Okay, not so much perhaps the chroma of the color. Look at the chroma of this palette. The highest chroma color here is the vermilion. Let me just bring this over here so you can see it better. So the vermilion is the highest chroma color, but compared to a modern color of cat red light, this vermilion seems kind of dark and earthy. So this is the perfect palette to paint flesh. And if you're using a prismatic palette, you will have a harder time. You have to go through more steps, and with each step, the color, uh, you know, you you have to mix more and more mixtures. So I love this palette because you could just go from vermilion to white, and then you bring a little bit of green in there or gray, and you have flesh. And the same thing with even the color like, uh, let's see here, clean my palette knife. So even with the cochineal lake, by mixing lead white, the cochineal lake compared to the modern alizarin crimson is very, very soft. So that just gives you a gorgeous flesh color immediately. And you see that in a lot of the old master paintings. So the historical palette does have a wonderful, system that you could use. And I've used this system. I've studied it for years. This is one of the reasons that I use the historical palette. When I was in school, a lot of the teachers were uh, interested in impressionist type color, and they were, they for the most part taught the prismatic palette and how to create complementary colors and neutralize the colors using the complementaries. So, but I find this palette a lot more um, easier to use, especially for your students. And you see that in the old manuscripts. They describe the mixtures very simply. They just describe how to mix, flesh tones by just using the lead white. Pacheco describes this in his manuscript, so that's where I've gotten a lot of the information. Also, I want to point out the another wonderful book that, well, I do not have here. I thought I had it here, but Merrifield wrote a wonderful book. It's really a commentary, and it includes, I believe, 7 manuscripts, maybe 6, and it's the Renaissance treatises on the art of painting. Uh, in the description below, in my kit, you could find that book, and there in the Brussels manuscripts, you will see a whole section on mixtures. And that's not just unique to the Brussels manuscript. You see that in all the manuscripts included in the Merrifield book. So it seems that artists were learning from their masters how to mix color, and they had a systematic approach to mixing color. So very different from standing in front of a model. In most art schools, they tell you, here's the model, and just here's the palette that you should use. Now mix the color. So this is interesting too because you see the same mixtures. Velazquez use of uh, lead white with vermilion is very common. You see that in Caravaggio, you see that in Goya, you see it in Rubens. There is different additions such as lead tin yellow or azurite here, but the mixtures are essentially the same. So it's very neat to think of color in terms of tradition, in terms of symbolic and metaphorical aspects, such as fire and water, earth. So that leads me to believe that the old masters were not only observing the color working from a model, but they were working with tradition. So that's important to study and to mention here. So I have a question here from Luis. Luis, thank you for coming by. Thank you for your question. It says here during that time the pigment called caput mortuum was used. So caput mortuum was not used. There is a color that predates even the 17th century. Uh, I believe in fresco they call it synopia, and it's hematite. Perhaps the caput mortuum that you're referring to is a hematite-based pigment, but uh, it could be used by, it is mentioned by some manuscripts, the use of hematite. It's essentially an iron oxide. It's a very, very dark, sort of purplish color. And I'm not sure the caput mortuum uh, mixture today. Perhaps they mix a synthetic iron oxide. Each brand has their own formula, so not sure which brand, or even in the back of the tube, you could see what they're referring to. So let's see. I have another question here from Scott. Scott, thank you for coming by. Let's see. When you use lampblack, do you add anything to accelerate the dry time? So yes, so the lampblack does take a long time to dry. Um, what I see in most of these manuscripts is the use of smalt. Smalt is a powerful dryer, and the demonstration that I just showed you, it's essentially I took that from my Velazquez book. The chemical analysis, they always find the black mixed with the lead white, which is another powerful dryer, and smalt. And you could use smalt. You could also use cobalt blue. These are powerful dryers. You could add a little bit of liquid. But in the old days, it seems that Ashra is also another powerful dryer based on copper. It has copper. So, and the smalt has cobalt. So when you add a little bit of this cobalt leaded glass, which is the smalt, to the black, it cools it off and it adds a bonus. It gives you a faster drying time. So that's probably, it gives you two bonus right there, drying time, and it cools off the mixture. So a wonderful technique employed by these amazing artists. Nowadays, you could use liquid, a little bit of liquid, but if you use cerulean blue with your black, the cerulean blue is also a powerful dryer. So you could use cobalt, you could use cerulean blue, mix a little bit into your black, it cools it off, and it makes it dry a lot faster. But if you're not interested in putting another color, you could also put a little bit of liquid or any sort of drying oil with a dryer. So these are techniques that you find they're common. Um, early in the Renaissance, they were putting verdigris, which is by taking copper plates and putting salt with and buried in manure, you get this sort of greenish color, and that is a very powerful dryer. I mean, it will dry in your palette in 4 or 5 hours time, and a lot of Renaissance artists use this verdigris to put in the black to also to cool it off and to make it dry faster. So thank you for your question, Scott. So a lot of great techniques. Thank you for your wonderful support. Before I go, I want to tell you a little bit about my courses on Udemy. Now, for a lot of you that are joining and that are interested in drawing, I have put together 3 courses on Udemy that are filled with information. Remember that these live presentations are mostly just a survey of a particular subject, such as color. Today we focus on uh, discovering palettes by the old masters. But in the drawing courses, there's many chapters with specific instructions and demos that you could check out in the description below. You'll find the links. Also, I want to invite you to subscribe to the channel if you have not subscribed. And also, I want to thank you for the wonderful support. We're almost at 2,000 subscribers, which is amazing. I never thought that uh, old master pigments and old master techniques would captivate such interest in you guys. So I really want to thank you for your wonderful support. For those of you that are joining the channel and are coming by, I also want to invite you to my social media sites, such as my Instagram page, Luis Borrero Art. You can find me there. Also, my Facebook page. I have an Atelier San Juan. That's my official school page. For those of you that are looking for perhaps private instruction online, you can find information for my summer workshop in ateliersanjuan.org. Okay. I believe I have here another comment by Chris. Says here, thank you for making your videos. Really wonderful to hear someone talking about classical technique. Chris, thank you for writing. Thank you for your feedback. That's wonderful. I really appreciate it. You guys make me feel that I'm not alone in my interest in all master techniques. So yeah, it's just a wonderful community and a great crowd. Thank you again for your comments and your questions. Remember that after the video, if you have any questions or comments, make sure to share in the comments below any questions that you may have had about the subject that we discussed today. So a lot of wonderful information, a lot of resources. Again, I want to thank you for coming by. Um, I'm going to be continuing to copy Old Master paintings. I have a couple presentations brewing. For the next live presentation, I want to work on a Goya copy. Goya is one of my favorite artists. So I've prepared a ground and I have some videos that I want to share with you guys. So for those of you that love Goya, make sure to join next time. I'm going to be talking about Goya and sharing his technique with a demonstration. So again, thank you for your wonderful support. I'm going to say goodbye for now. Thanks again. Have a good one.